สำหรับในส่วนนี้ก็จะเป็นในส่วนที่2หรือว่า Part 2 นั่นเองของการประชุมปี 2025 นะคะ 2025 Berkshire Hathaway Annual Shareholder Meeting เรามาต่อกันเลย
Hi, Mr. Buffett. My name is Daniel, and I'm from Tenafly, New Jersey. First of all, I just want to say how grateful I am for getting the opportunity to ask you a question. When it comes to your principles of investing, you often talk about how important it is to be patient. Has there ever been a situation in your investing career where breaking that principle and acting fast has benefited you? Thank you.
Well, that's a good question. And there are times when you have to act fast. In fact, we made a great deal of money because we're willing to act faster than anybody around. Jessica Toombs was, I think she's the stepdaughter or step-granddaughter of Ben Rosner, a manager of ours. And in 1966, I got a call from a fellow named Feldsteiner in New York, and he said, I represent Mrs. Annenberg. And there were actually 9 Annenberg sisters, I believe, before Laura Annenberg came along as the son. But he said, we have a business we'd like to sell you. So I called Charlie up, and I got a few details, and it sounded very interesting. And Charlie and I went back to the office of Will Feldsteiner in New York, who was a marvelous guy. Never met him since, but he was handling things for Mrs. A. Simon, but her name was Annenberg, and her husband had been the partner of Ben Rosner, but he had died, and Ben got kind of tense about working with her, and so he offered us this business at a bargain price. He offered us a business for $6 million. It had $2 million in cash. It had a $2 million piece of property in a 900 block of what's the key street in Philadelphia down there, Market Street, and it was making $2 million a year pre-tax, and the price was $6 million. And Charlie and I went back to this place, and Ben Rosner was there, and he just was upset about doing business with his partner's widow. She was extremely wealthy, and he wasn't enjoying it. He was very nervous about selling it. Then he said to me and Charlie, he said, I'll run this business for you until December 31st, and then I'm out of here. And I got Charlie. We went out in the hallway, and I said, if this guy quits at the end of the year, you can throw away every book on psychology I've ever read. And so that began a wonderful. We bought the company and had a great relationship. And did I know that morning when I got a phone call from Will Feldsteiner that did his background about it? I've had a couple of times, and that was one of them, where people in the East felt that they had a stereotype in their mind of what people from the Midwest were like. And Ben had been married. His first marriage was to a woman from Iowa, and he just figured that anybody from the Midwest was okay. And the trick when you get in a business with somebody, or you get in a room with somebody like that, and they want to sell you something for $6 million that's got $2 million of cash and a couple million of real estate and is making $2 million a year. You don't want to be patient then. You want to be patient and waiting to get the occasional call. My phone will ring sometime, and with something that, wakes me up. I may be sleeping in there or something, but you just never know when it'll happen, and that's what makes it fun. I mean, so patience. It's a combination of patience and a willingness to do something that afternoon if it comes to you. You don't want to be patient about acting on deals that make sense, and you don't want to be very patient with people that are talking to you about things that will never happen. So it's not a constant asset. It's not a constant liability to be patient. Thank you.
Well, Warren, I was going to add, as you're being patient, I happen to know, and I think that goes for our Ajit also and all our managers. Very patient when we're looking at opportunities, and as you touched on, we want to act quickly. But while we're being patient, never underestimate the amount of reading and work that's being done to be prepared to act quickly. Because we do know, be it equities, but I would include a variety of private companies that when the opportunity presents itself, we're ready to act. And that's a large part of being patient, is using it to be prepared.
Yeah, and of course it doesn't come in anything like an even flow. I mean, the most uneven sort of activity you could get into, and the main thing you have to do is you have to be willing to hang up after 5 seconds, and you have to be willing to say yes after 5 seconds. And
Absolutely.
And you can't be filled with self-doubt in the business. You just forget it. It's going to work. Go into some other activity. But you also, one of the great pleasures, it is the great pleasure actually in this business, is having people trust you. And that's really why work at 90 when you've got more money than anybody could count. If they started the day and having machines that are helping them and everything else, it means nothing in terms of how you're going to live or how your children are going to live or anything else. But both Charlie and I, we just enjoyed the fact that people trusted us, and they trusted us 60 years ago or 70 years ago in partnerships we had. And we never sought out professional investors to join our partnerships. Among all of my partners, I never had a single institution. I never wanted an institution. I wanted people, and I didn't want people that were sitting around and having people present to them every 3 months and tell them what they wanted to hear and all that sort of thing. So, and that's what we got, and that's why we've got this group here today. So it's all worked out. But that it's you don't want to be patient when things are going your way. When the time comes to act, you want to get it done that day. Okay, Becky.
This question is from Flavio Montenegro, a shareholder from Guatemala. A couple of years ago in this meeting, Mr. Jain outlined the significant challenges Geico faced in modernizing and integrating its IT systems. It was also mentioned that competitors were ahead in their pricing strategies because of the use of telematics. Today, Geico's turnaround is evident through strong pricing and operational improvements. Could you provide more details on the specific actions taken under Todd's leadership and how those changes will help sustain a long-term competitive advantage in the coming years?
Yeah, Todd has done a great job for us in terms of turning around the operations. When he took over, there were two major issues that Geico was behind its competitors on. Firstly, the term Warren used in we all have been using is matching rate to risk. And secondly, telematics. We were at the bottom of the list, and so far as telematics is concerned, about 5-6 years ago. Since then, we have made rapid strides, and telematics, which used to be a source of competitive disadvantage to us, is no longer so. And I would argue that our telematics at Geico is about as good as anyone else's today. So that's been one huge catch up. Secondly, in terms of matching rate to risk, there again, I think we have caught up with our competitors and we're as good as anyone else in the field. All this together with the cost reduction effort that Geico and Todd gets a lot of credit for, he has basically reduced the workforce by 20,000, starting with something close to 50 odd thousand. He's brought it down to 20,000, and that translates to, I guess, at least $2 billion per year. So all this has allowed Geico to become a much focused competitor. So much so, in the last 7 quarters, Geico has shown a combined ratio that has an 8 in front of it. And I never thought I'd live to see the day when anyone could have a combined ratio at so low as it is right now. So I think Geico's done a great job. Its 80 combined translates to the largest profit anyone is making on the underwriting side in the personal automobile business. So, we've achieved a lot, Todd has achieved a lot, but I do not want to be so arrogant as to say that mission accomplished. We've achieved a lot, but I still think we need to do a lot more in technology. AI, as we talked about, is going to be a big force, and we need to play catch up there. Not catch up, but we in a state of readiness. So I think Geico is in a great shape right now. Warren, you want to add anything?
No, it's a fascinating case study, but that's what's so interesting about the whole game of business, but particularly about our businesses, is that each one is a little different, but they all have challenges of certain sorts, but they also certain numbers have opportunities. We paid $50 million for half of Geico in 1976, what turned out to be half of Geico, $50 million. 50 per, we now own 100%, but 50% of $2 billion that we earned in the first quarter is $1 billion, which on a $50 million investment is, 20 for 1 1/4. So that takes years to develop. But the interesting thing is the auto insurance policy, which didn't even exist 100 years ago. I mean, it just, well, I should say 120 years ago. But it's by far the largest item in the property casualty insurance business. It's huge.
The only thing I'd like to add is, in addition to the underwriting profit, Geico provides $29 billion of float.
Oh, yeah, in addition, yeah. And that's not unimportant. When you paid $50 million to get the business, it's giving you $29 billion to work with for nothing. And on top of that, gives you $1 billion of profit in a quarter. The interesting thing about auto insurance is that the company was started in 1936. We're selling the same product as 1936. We're being more sophisticated about pricing it than we were then. Somebody just made the judgment. The fellow that came from USAA made the judgment that government employees, the name Geico stands for Government Employees Insurance Company, that government employees were better drivers than average. And I don't think he was an actuary or anything else, but he just made an observation. And so he left USAA, which is still a very successful company, and he started Geico for a few $100,000. And he made money the first year from underwriting. He made money the second year. This is not a public offering type thing. Use phony accounting for 10 years and all that sort of thing. They just prices to make money. And that's exactly what's been done since 1936. The policy really, your auto insurance policy looks a lot like the one that you had then. And this huge field has sprung up around us and it's still growing. And of course, nobody likes to buy insurance, but they sure like to drive. and Geico is it's a fascinating story. And about 3 times over the years, the company has gotten sidetracked one way or another, and then it gets back to its basics, and it's a wonderful, wonderful business. And we showed at this annual meeting one time a message from Lorimer Davidson, and Lorimer Davidson in January of 1950 was the only person in the building that I'd gone down on a Saturday to visit, but it turned out they didn't work on Saturdays in Washington, and I pounded on the door till finally a janitor let me in. And I said to the janitor, "Is there anybody else I can talk to here except you?" And he didn't take it personally, and he said, "Well, there's one guy on the 6th floor." And a fellow named Lorimer Davidson did wonderful things for me. You get a few breaks in life in terms of people you will meet who will just change your life dramatically. And if you need a handful of those, and when you get them, you treasure them. And we've had them on this board at Berkshire. If you take Tom Murphy and Sandy Gottesman and Walter Scott and Bill Scott, and, one thing we've done is we've held on to the human assets. We've made lifelong assets out of people that are the right sort, and with incredible talent, but also just lots of fun to work with and always doing more than their share. And, to get a chance to talk to Lorimer Davidson on a Saturday afternoon, you just listen carefully. And that comes in the category of turn every page. Some of them you want to turn pretty fast, but you just get lucky in life, and you want to take advantage of your luck. Okay, station 5.
My name is Benjamin Graham Sanderson from Pasadena, California. Warren, thank you for all you've taught us over the years. Earlier you said nobody but Steve Jobs could have created Apple, but nobody but Tim Cook could have developed it like he has. Warren, nobody but you could have created Berkshire, and I presume you view Greg as an outlier among outliers, but he seems so normal. Sorry, Greg.
Yeah, that's a nice way of saying it's not normal, actually, but I appreciate it.
So, I was hoping you could share what specifically about Greg makes him your preferred successor. And Greg, we're excited to get to know you more over the next few decades. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you've hit on the most important question. And now, in terms of the business, we've got a wonderful group of businesses. We've got an ability to do things that nobody else can do, which is hard to get in a capitalistic system that's been developed as fully as the United States has been. I mean, imagine being able to create something that is in a very, very, very big playing field. It would be very, very hard to develop anything like it. I don't think you could develop the people around it, let alone the capital position, and the history and everything else. And the answer, of course, is that it does take a long, long time, and it takes getting around you a small cadre of people, which then spreads out somewhat. But where you've got mutual trust, where people do more than their share. And I've been around a lot of businesses over the years. And by nature, I'm somewhat critical of everything. I mean, I'm looking for what's wrong in things, because that's part of investing is looking, what are you missing? But we have, we've got people that if they're asked to put on a show like this, instead of doing whatever their regular job is, they participated. I went around the groups of people who were exhibiting yesterday for an hour and a half. And these are people who are thanking me, and totally enthused about coming and doing a lot of work for which they don't get paid anything extra. I don't know anything about the arrangements the individual companies make, but they work hard and they enjoy their work. And, you really want to work at something you enjoy. I've had 5 bosses in life, and I liked every one of them. And they were all interesting. I still decided that I'd rather work for myself than anybody else. But if you find people that are wonderful to work with, that's the place to go. And I've told my kids that basically, that you don't get lucky like I did when I found at 7 or 8 years of age what really interested me. It could have taken a lot longer, but you want to find the song. Find the sound is. There's a movie called The Glenn Miller Story, and Glenn Miller went on from having a broken down band for 15 years to turning out the first. He found the sound and created the first gold record. I don't know whether any of you know what it was, but it was the Chattanooga Choo Choo in 1941, I think it was. And he turned around from being a nothing with the band that he had till he found the sound. And I always told my kids ever since that their sound isn't my sound, but and you don't find it necessarily on the first job you take, because you got to eat, but if you get lucky like I did, you find it when you're very young, and then just keep doing it, and don't worry too much about starting salaries, and don't worry about be very careful who you work for, because you will take on the habits of the people around you. So there's certain jobs you shouldn't take, and but you've got the greatest country in the world, and you got the greatest time in the world. So I would say that while I'm handing this over to Greg, that you can't even dream all the dreams that you could have about a place like Berkshire. But the big thing you have to do, though, is always to be sure you can play the next day. I mean, in terms of financial activities on a meaningful scale, you don't want to go. There was a book about, what was the name of that book? You only have to get rich once. I mean, you don't want to do anything that risks what's been created. So if very stupid things are happening around you, you do not want to participate. If people are making more money because they're borrowing money, or they're participating in securities that are really pieces of junk, but they hope to find a bigger sucker later on. you just have to forget that. That'll bite you at some point. And the basic game is so good. And you've been so lucky to be born now. I mean, if I'd been born in 1700, I'd say I want to go back in the womb. What the hell with this? It's just too hard. But now I've come along to do something where I can just play around all day with things I enjoy doing, and it's really it's a pretty wonderful life. Anything, Greg, you want to add or subtract from that?
Nothing to subtract, but I would always just say I couldn't be more, as I've said in the past, more humbled and honored, obviously, to be in this role. But to have actually been part of Berkshire for, Warren, it's now 25 plus years, had the opportunity to be part of Berkshire and to work with you and Ajit and our board, but many other people in our company. And as you touched on, when you find something like that, and you find something like that, like Berkshire, that's so special, you fall in love with it, and it becomes just what you want to do every day, and it's just an incredible opportunity. So thank you.
And the gentleman who asked the question, if you don't find it immediately, don't starve to death or anything in the meantime. But you will find it, and you'll find it in the right individual. In the sense, it's somewhat like finding the right person in marriage. I mean, probably the first. Some of you may have married the person you met on your first date. Although I guess they don't even have dates anymore. But it's sometimes it pays to wait too. Okay, Becky.
This is a question from Mark Bonnke and Helen Friedrichsen in Rapid City, South Dakota. As the U.S. dollar quickly loses value in relation to other foreign currencies in 2025, is Berkshire Hathaway taking steps to minimize this currency risk and its impact on quarterly and annual earnings? If so, please explain. And I'll just add from Mary Cheng, another shareholder, Berkshire currently borrows in Japanese yen to offset its currency risk and its Japanese stock investments. In the future, will you invest in foreign currency denominated assets unhedged?
Yeah, well, we always have, pretty much. The Japanese situation is different because we do intend to stay so long with that position, and the funding situation is so cheap that we essentially have attempted to some degree to match purchases against yen denominated funding, but that's not a policy of ours. In fact, that's the first time we've done that, and we've owned lots of securities in foreign currency. So we do nothing in terms of the question about its impact on quarterly and annual earnings. We don't do anything based on its impact on quarterly and annual earnings. I mean, there's never been a board meeting I can remember or the conversation I had with Charlie when I said, where I say, if we do this, our annual earnings will be this, and therefore we ought to, whether it's accounting or whether it's anything, we just, the number will turn out to be what it will be. What counts is where we are 5 or 10 or 20 years from now. And if you start focusing on what number you're going to produce, you will quickly get tempted, at least based on the experience I've seen from viewing 20 companies. You will one way or another, play around with the numbers, and sometimes seriously play around with the numbers. And I've seen people that I trust them in all kinds of other ways, but they regard playing around with numbers as perfectly okay. And that's just not something, we just don't think about that. So actually, the the yen uh, relationship of the yen, behavior of the yen in the last quarter, resulted in certain gap charges, and but it doesn't make any difference. It'll change next month or next year, and obviously we wouldn't want to be owning anything that we thought was in a currency that was really going to hell. And that's the big thing we worry about with the United States currency. I mean, the tendency of a government to want to debase its currency over time is, there's no system that beats that. You can pick dictators, you can pick representatives, you can do anything, but the people, there will be a push toward weaker currencies, and of course that is, I mentioned very briefly in the annual report that the fiscal policy is what scares me in the United States, because it's made the way it is, and all the motivations are to doing a lot of things that can cause trouble with money. But that's not limited to the United States. It's all over the world, and some places it gets out of control regularly. As they devalue at rates that are breathtaking, and that's continued. I mean, people can study economics and you can have all kinds of arrangements, but in the end, if you've got people that control the currency, you can issue paper money, and you will, or you can engage in clipping currencies like they used to do centuries ago. And there will always be people. It's the nature of their job. I'm not singling them out as particularly evil or anything like that. But the natural course of government is to make the currency worth less over time, and that's got important consequences. And it's very hard to build checks and balances into the system to keep that from happening. And we've had a lot of fun here in the last, either the first 100 days or the last 100 days, whatever you want to call it, watching what happens when people try to make sure that they aren't running fiscal risks. And that game isn't over, and it never will be over, in finality. If you look up and search the great inflations of post-World War II, it's just a list that goes on forever, and the same names keep popping up and everything. So value of currency is a scary thing. And we don't have any great system for beating that. We do in this particular Japanese position, because we expect to hold it for 50 or 100 years or more. And we will be owning something that's denominated in yen and easily predictable. We'll just, as long as the carry on it is right and everything, we'll attempt to issue Japanese denominated liabilities, but that's not because of anything we care about in terms of quarterly or annual earnings. Greg, do you have anything to say?
I was just going to say that relative to the question, that there's no question we were fundamentally very comfortable with investing in the 5 Japanese companies and recognizing we're investing in yen. The fact we could then borrow in yen was almost just like a nice incremental opportunity. But we were very comfortable both with the Japanese companies and with the currency we would ultimately realize, i.e. in the yen.
Yeah, we only made, as I referred to earlier, one big currency play. which was connected a little bit with when I wrote that article for Fortune. And we got long 12 other currencies, as I remember. Only 4 or 5 of them are really big currencies. But when I say we got long it, that means we're short the dollar. And so we held that position for a couple of years, and we made several $1 billion on it, which was significant to us then. Still is. Charlie always felt that if he had to pick an area outside of stocks in which to invest, and he knew a lot about bonds, he knew a lot about real estate, he knew a lot about a lot of things, but he said he thought he could make a lot of money out of being in foreign currency. But we've done it once. It's not inconceivable we would do it again, but it's unlikely. But there could be things happen in the United States that would make us want to own a lot of other currencies. And I suppose if we made some very large investment, European country or there might be a situation where we would do a lot of financing in their currency. But it's not it was something that just was sort of obvious to do in the Japanese situation, where we had the ability to borrow yen at very, very low carrying cost, and we felt very good about the income we'd be receiving from these securities, and if the present condition, which it won't, I mean it never does, but prevail for decades and decades, we would probably keep doing the same sort of thing. But things change in the world too, so don't take that as a prediction. Okay, section 6.
Good morning, Warren and Greg, Ajit. Thank you so much for hosting this event. Good to be here. My name is Dashboy Winditker, and I'm from great country of Mongolia. A little bit background about my country. Mongolia is an emerging market and landlocked country sandwiched between Russia and China. But we are rich in history and minerals and have full democracy and growing economy. Last week, we hosted our second annual Mongolia Investor Conference in New York to attract investors like yourself. I know you meet and give advice informally to government leaders such as South Korea, China, and India. What advice would you give to government business leaders of emerging markets like Mongolia to attract institutional investors like yourself? It'd be great if you have long-term plans for exposure to emerging markets as a hedge or an opportunistic investment. Lastly, I welcome all of you to Mongolia, and my country folks would be very happy if you can make it to our economic forum this July.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I have trouble planning a trip to Council Bluffs, which is just a few miles from here, but it takes an optimist. Actually, I met a fellow here at the annual meeting, probably 20 years ago or more, who did a lot in Mongolia. And he did very well in Mongolia and actually moved there for quite a while. I would say that if you're looking for advice to give the government over there, it's to develop a reputation for having a solid currency over time. I mean, that we we don't really want to go into any country where we think there's a chance, I mean, a significant probability of runaway inflation. It's too hard to figure. Other people figured out ways to make money in hyperinflationary situations, but that's not our game, and I don't think I'd play it well. So we wouldn't be. That would be a factor with us. The chances are, and we won't find anything in Mongolia that fits our size requirements. Aside from that, but like I say, I think my friend that I met here 20 years ago has done very well in Mongolia, and if the country develops a reputation for being business friendly and currency conscious, I think that bodes very well for the residents of that country, particularly if it has some other natural assets that it can build around. I don't know that much about the minerals there or anything of the sort, but I mean, who would have bet on the United States in 1790? But we didn't have to have perfection. We just had to be better than the other guys for quite a while. And we started out with nothing, and we ended up with close to 25% of the world's GDP and faster growth rates and generally sounder currencies and all kinds of things. So I wish you well. Okay, Becky.
This question is from Peter Shen in New Jersey. It's for Mr. Buffett and Mr. Jain. In recent years,
Mongolia, and if the country develops a reputation for being business friendly and currency conscious, I think that bodes very well for the residents of that country, particularly if it has some other natural assets that it can build around. I don't know that much about the minerals there or anything of the sort, but I mean, who would have bet on the United States in 1790? But we didn't have to have perfection. We just had to be better than the other guys for quite a while, and we started out with nothing, and we ended up with close to 25% of the world's GDP and faster growth rates and generally sounder currencies and all kinds of things. So I wish you well. Okay, Becky.
this question is from Peter Shen in New Jersey. It's for Mr. Buffett and Mr. Jain. In recent years, large private equity firms like Blackstone, Apollo, and KKR have aggressively expanded into insurance, raising permanent capital, managing float, and aiming to replicate the model that Berkshire pioneered decades ago. Given that these firms are now directly competing for insurance assets, often using higher leverage and more aggressive investment strategies, how do you view their impact? Do you believe that the private equity model poses risks to policyholders in the broader financial system? And has this competition made it more challenging for Berkshire to find and price insurance opportunities safely and profitably today?
Okay.
Yeah, part of the question is very easy. There's no question the private equity firms have come into this space, and we are no longer competitive in this space. We used to do a fair amount in this space, but in the last 3-4 years, I don't think we've done a single deal. Now, you ought to separate this whole segment in two separate segments. One is the property casualty end of the business and the life end of the business. The private equity firms that you mentioned are all very active in the life end of the business, not the property casualty end of the business. You are right in identifying the risks in these private equity firms are taking on, both in terms of leverage and in terms of credit risk. And while the economy is doing great and credit spreads are low, the private equity firms who've taken the assets from very conservative investments, and I wouldn't say high octane, but they've certainly invested these assets in situations where they get a lot more return on the investment. And as I said, as long as the economy is good and credit spreads are low, they will make money. They'll make a lot of money because of leverage. However, there is always the danger that at some point the regulators might get cranky and say, you're taking too much risk on behalf of your policyholders, and that could end in tears. We do not like the risk reward that these situations offer, and therefore we put up the white flag.
There are people that want to copy Berkshire's model, but usually they don't want to copy it by also copying the model of the CEO having all of his money in the company forever. And I mean, they've got a different equation. They're interested in, and that's capitalism. But they have a whole different situation, and then they probably have a somewhat different fiduciary feeling about what they're doing, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, they go on to other things. And if what we do here at Berkshire doesn't work, I spend the end of my life regretting what I've created. So it's just a whole different personal equation. And there is no property casualty company that can basically replicate Berkshire. That wasn't the case at the start. I mean, at the start, we just had National Indemnity a few miles from here, and anybody could have duplicated what we had, but that was before a G, and the G came with us in 1986, and at that point the other fellows should have given up. Yeah. Station 7, please.
Hi, my name is Marie. I'm from Melrose, Massachusetts. Thank you for the time today. As a young person interested in investing like myself, I would love to hear your insights, Mr. Buffett. What were some pivotal lessons you learned early in your career, and what advice do you have for young investors who are looking to develop their investment philosophy? Thank you.
Well, those are good questions. I wish I thought of them myself earlier in my life. Who you associate with is just enormously important, and don't expect that you'll make every decision right on that. I mean, but you are going to you're going to have your life progress in the general direction of the people that you work with, that you admire, that become your friends. I mentioned a few fellows that have died in the last couple of years. Well, all of those people were people that if we were working together on something 1/10,000th the size of Berkshire, I mean, they'd be the kind of people you choose. They're people that make you want to be better than you are, and you want to hang out with people that are better than you are and that you feel are better than you are, because you're going to go in the direction of the people that you associate with, and that's something you learn, and of course you learn it late in life. It's hard to really appreciate how important some of those factors are until you get much older. But when you've got people around you like Tom Murphy and just name him, Sandy Gottesman, Walter Scott, you're just going to live a better life than you do if you just go out and look at somebody that's making a lot of money and decide you're going to try and copy him or something of the sort. So I would try to. I'd try to be associated with smart people too, where I could learn a lot from them. And I would try to look for something that I would do if I didn't need the money. I mean, what you're really looking for in life is something where you've got a job that you'd hold if you didn't need the money. And I've had that. And Charlie out for a very, very long time. Back all the fellows I named had it. And they also, every one of those ones I named, they always did more than their share. And they never sought more than their share of the credit. They just behaved as the way you'd like anybody you work with. And when you find them, you treasure them. And when you don't find them, you still keep doing whatever causes you to eat or enables you to eat. But you don't give up on looking around, and you'll find people do wonderful things for you. I mentioned earlier going down to Geico and knocking on the door when the door was locked. I mean, who knows what was behind that door? Went in, but in 10 minutes I found that I had a man that was going to be just wonderfully helpful to me. And of course, if somebody's going to be helpful to you, you want to try to figure out ways to be helpful to them. So you get a compounding of good intentions and good behavior. And unfortunately, you can get the reverse of that in life too. And with a lot of, I was lucky in having a good environment for living that kind of a life. And other people, have a whole different environmental situation they have to overcome it. But don't feel guilty about your good luck if you've got, if you've got. If you live in the United States, there are 8 billion people in the world, and there's 330 million in the United States. You've already won the game to a great degree, and then just keep making the most of it. But you don't want to associate with people or enterprises that ask you to do something or tell you to do something that you shouldn't be doing. And that's one of the problems. I mean, different professions select for different types of people. And it's interesting to me that in the investment business, so many people get out of it after they've made a pile of money. That you really want something that you'll stick around for. Whether you need the money. Greg doesn't need the money. Ajit doesn't need the money remotely, but they enjoy what they do, and they're so damn good at it. It's it just. Well, I've had the advantage of seeing how that works over time. The best manager I ever knew, and there's a lot of contention for who that would be, but actually was Tom Murphy Sr., who lives the almost 98. And I've never seen anybody that could get the potential out of other people more than Murph could. I mean, if you wanted to become a better person, you want to work for Tom Murphy. And there are all kinds of successful people that really don't have that don't bring that to the party. And I'm not saying that's the only way to succeed, but I think it's the most pleasant way to succeed for sure. And I think that the Berkshire experience is pretty dramatic. I mean, to operate with Sandy Gottesman from 1960 3 until he died a couple of years ago. You know, Walter Scott for 30 years and Creighton operated with him for 25 years or so.
Right.
Yeah,
30.
Yeah, and you know, you really can't miss it. And, you know, you'll learn all the time, but you'll now learn how to be successful in business. You'll learn how to be successful in life, and so that's my recommendation, and for some reason, apparently you live longer too, because it's pretty amazing. I mean, these people I'm talking about, including myself, I mean, you know, I like to attribute it to this and a few other things, but I think a happy person lives longer than somebody that's doing some things that they don't really admire that much in life. Okay, let's move on to, I guess it's Becky next.
The first quarter ended March 31st, and it did show that Berkshire's cash pile expanded from the end of the last year, but the greatest market turmoil came in April. Martin Devine, a shareholder from Scotland who is attending the meeting today, wants to know, has the recent market volatility presented Berkshire with opportunities? And Martin just wrote in an addendum in the last 40 minutes or so, pointing out that you mentioned Berkshire almost invested $10 billion recently, and wanting to know if you could talk more about that.
Well, then I can give you a good answer to the second part, which is no. But 10 billion wouldn't have done that much, you know. That's the other side. Another side of it. What has happened in the last 30, 45 days, 100 days, whatever you want to pick up, whatever this period has been, it's really nothing. There's been 3 times since we acquired Berkshire that Berkshire has gone down 50% in a very short period of time, 3 different times. Nothing was fundamentally wrong with the company at any time, but this is not a huge move. The Dow Jones average hit 381 in September of 1929. It got down to 42. So that's by going from 100 to 11. This has not been a dramatic bear market or anything of the sort. I mean, it's you know, like pointed out, if I've had 250 trading days a day, you know, for however many years I've been old enough to trade stocks. I've got 17 or 18,000 days. There's been plenty of periods that just are dramatically different than this. I mean, when the day I was born, the Dow Jones was at 240, and that was August 30th, 1930, and between that and the low, it went from 240 to 41. I mean, that's so. If people think that it made a really major change, it didn't. If it's gone up 15% instead of down 15%, people they take that with remarkable grace. but if it makes a difference to you whether your stocks are down 15% or not, you need to get a somewhat different investment philosophy, because the world is not going to adapt to you. You're going to have to adapt to the world, and you will see a period certainly in the next 20 years, you'll see a period that will be in what somebody in the market described one time as a hair curl compared to anything you've seen. before. I mean, it just happens periodically. The world makes big mistakes, and surprises happen in dramatic ways. And the more sophisticated the system gets, the more the surprises can be out of right field. That's part of the stock market, and that's what makes it a good place to focus your efforts if you've got the proper temperament for it, and a terrible place to get involved if you get frightened by markets that decline and get excited when stock markets go up. I don't mean to sound particularly critical. I mean, I know people have emotions, but you got to check them at the door when you invest. Okay.
แล้วตอนนี้ก็เป็นตอนจบของพาร์ทที่2ค่ะเราจะมาเจอกันใหม่ในพาร์ทที่3